Story 1. Vic Morrow's death on set, along with two Vietnamese children, occurred during the filming of The Twilight Zone. The movie should never have been released. Story 2. Anton Yelchin. Not because there was foul play, but because my job at the time involved pulling cars onto a car wash conveyor, putting them in neutral, and jumping out. That model of Jeep and the specific shifter were so poorly designed and hard to be certain what gear it was in that an accident like what happened to Anton Yelchin was more like an inevitability. On, I believe, 2 occasions we had runaway Jeeps of the same vintage because they were not properly in park or neutral. No injuries, just property damage in our case, thankfully. Many people at Jeep should have been fired over that poor design. Changing things just to be different without it also being clear that it is better is awful. And this time it killed someone who was entering the best part of his life. Story 3. Anton Yelchin. So young and talented. Just starting his career, and then he was gone because of a malfunction in his car. Such a random and preventable death. The software update that fixed the issue with his car was released the week he died. Story 4. Selena Quintanilla. To preface, Yolanda Saldivar is absolutely and fully responsible for her murder. But I wish Selena had never chosen to engage with her in any way, especially privately. It was an unfair and cruel way to go. If Selena were still here with us, she would have had a remarkable legacy. Story 5. Brandon Lee was just starting his career and was shot by what was supposed to be a blank, but contained a small fragment that killed him instantly. They were filming his character's death scene in The Crow. It was sad knowing that he actually died while shooting the scene. Story 6. The death of Bray Wyatt devastated me. The death of David Carradine introduced me to a very strange concept. Story 7. Richard Simmons. His reclusiveness and relationship with his housekeeper contributed to the mystery of his death. A beautiful, gentle soul who genuinely believed everyone deserves movement regardless of size. He was gone way too soon. Story 8. Barbaro. The horse was not right on Preakness Day. You could tell when he was being saddled and when he was warming up. He was agitated and looked uncomfortable, so much so that 19-year-old me saw it on television and the commentators were skirting around his appearance. They eventually said he looked fine, but it sounded like they were trying to convince themselves. Then he keyed himself up so much he broke through the starting stalls and gave a false start before breaking down. I don't think he was injured before the race, but I think he was so worked up and stressed out that he ran erratically. Story 9. Elliott Smith. By all accounts, he was in a good place. Clean, no alcohol or drugs in his system, and getting ready to release a new record he seemed excited about. Then he stabbed himself twice in the chest. How do you even do that? Once and you're done, I would think. His girlfriend was in the bathroom when it happened, and she came out and pulled the knife out of his chest. He also left a one-line suicide note with his own name misspelled. Forensics on the handwriting was never released. What kind of detective would see someone misspell their own name on a one-sentence suicide note and think it must have been a suicide? Elliott deserved better. Story 10. Chadwick Boseman, for me. I was just sitting on my couch when the news was quietly shared by my sister. Then, after looking at interviews and photos, it slowly became a horrific realization that he had been fighting it off-screen for a while. Story 11. I do not know if you would call Ivana Trump a celebrity, but if so, I have trouble believing her death was an accident. The same applies to Jeffrey Epstein. Story 12. Gene Hackman and his wife. A disease that is usually carried by rodents is unusual, especially for 2 multimillionaires. Story 13. Heath Ledger's death felt sudden and left many questions unanswered. He was incredibly talented and had much more to offer. It never felt right to me because it seemed too soon and too tragic for someone so full of promise. Story 14. Steve Irwin. I still can't believe it was a stingray. It breaks my heart as an adult. I was 11 when he passed and watched his funeral on television. I genuinely believe Steve had a better chance of convincing the masses of climate change more than just about anyone else on this planet. Story 15. Phil Hartman. I know that Bryn had anger issues, but how does a mother orphan her 2 young children so violently? They were home, by the way. That was when I realized just how dark and hollow the Hollywood ethos truly is. Story 16. Honestly, I think Naomi Judd died by suicide the night before she was to be inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame. It is really sad. Story 17, and Hetchy. The way she died and the video footage of her sitting up on the stretcher after she was trapped in the burning car for hours haunts my mind. Disturbing and very sad. Story 18, Heath Ledger was big, and he was reaching Leonardo DiCaprio levels of fame after Brokeback Mountain and The Dark Knight. Chris Cornell, sad and why? Just a good person. Chester Bennington, sad and why? Another good person. Chadwick Boseman was motivation for getting checked the other week. Marilyn Monroe had a really bad life and was abused by many people. Carrie Fisher affected me personally. She was my VHS family surrogate in Star Wars. Judith Barcy appeared in The Land Before Time. If you were having a good day, don't look it up. Anton Yelchin's death was the saddest and most unnecessary. His career was on the rise too. Tupac, someone needs to be held publicly accountable for ordering it. Possibly Diddy or Suge. Story 19, Robin Williams. What a terrible shock when he took his own life. A heartbreaking moment when his wife revealed how ill he was, and no one knew. He was probably one of the very rare, genuinely good people on this planet. Story 20, somewhat random, but Tom Petty. Yes, I am sure he had substance abuse issues, but he always seemed so laid back, like the kind of famous musician who could live and perform into his 80s and beyond, like Willie Nelson. Story 21, Philip Seymour Hoffman. Less than a year after his scathing portrayal of the founder of the Church of Scientology in The Master, he was found dead of an overdose after 23 years sober, with all the heroin baggies displayed in front of him. Story 22, Marilyn Monroe. The doctor who performed the initial autopsy and the housekeeper had much to say about her final night and oversights within the investigation. Story 23, Left Eye. I always thought it was a little too convenient that her last moments were captured on camera. Edit. I originally wrote Tyan Watkins when I meant Lisa Lopez. Tyan Watkins is still with us. Sorry, Tyan Watkins. Story 24. Michael Hutchence, the lead singer of INXS. It's an old song. Not sure if many people nowadays remember it. Story 25. Olof Palme, Swedish Prime Minister. He and his wife were walking home from a movie one night when an unknown man approached, shot them both, and then fled on foot. Palme died, but his wife recovered. To this day, the assailant and his motive remain unknown. Story 26. Brittany Murphy. Okay, I understand it was natural causes, but there was still something suspicious about a potential environmental factor causing such a severe respiratory illness. Yes, young people with no major underlying conditions can get a respiratory infection that can be fatal, but it seemed unusual. It was like she died of COVID-19 20 years before COVID-19 existed. Story 27, Casey Kasem, the original voice of Shaggy from Scooby-Doo and a famous radio DJ, was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease and Lewy body dementia in 2007. As his condition declined, tensions arose between his children from his first marriage and his wife, Jean. Jean took Casey out of the hospital in 2014, transported him to multiple states, and lied to his children, telling them he was no longer in the United States. Eventually, they found him in Washington. He developed a compression ulcer, also known as a bedsore, which ultimately led to his death. His children accused Jean of elder abuse and of not respecting his end-of-life care wishes. After his death, the body was released to Jean. She moved it from a funeral home in the United States, believed to be in California where he wished to be buried at Forest Lawn, to one in Montreal, and then ultimately to Norway where she buried him in an unmarked grave. The final years of his life were tragic. While researching some details, I learned that his daughter, Carrie, has a podcast about the whole saga called Bitter Blood, which I plan to listen to. Story 28. Celebrity is a slight stretch here, but I personally believe there is a very strong chance Elliott Smith was murdered. He and his girlfriend were both known to be mentally unstable hard drug users who had loud violent fights, including on the day he was killed. He had multiple stab wounds to the chest with no hesitation wounds, which are found in the overwhelming majority of self-inflicted stab wound cases, and there were signs of defensive wounds on his arms. His death was ruled a suicide. Story 29. My answer is always the same: Corey Haim. He was on the verge of naming his abusers in Hollywood, one of them being Charlie Sheen. Yes, he struggled with addiction, as many would, given what we now know about how children are abused in the industry. But he had been sober for a while. He was getting his life together and working on a movie he was really proud of. I know many people may not even know who he is, and that makes me sad because he was such a huge part of Hollywood culture at the time. He was one of the two Coreys, but in my opinion, he was one of a kind and definitely the better of the two. There are stories from other actors and actresses who talk about how selfless he was. He would receive a check from a movie, and even while deep in his addiction, he'd go to an animal shelter and spend the entire amount on food, toys, and playing with the animals. I assume it helped him feel good for a little while and forget about his demons briefly. It made him happy. Corey Haim was on the verge of telling his story about the abuse he suffered as a child in the movie industry between the ages of 10 and 12. He was sober and wanted people to know that these high-profile celebrities were not exactly what we thought they were. He and Corey Feldman had a reality show they were filming, and Haim intended to reveal the truth on the show. He didn't name names but confronted Feldman about his role in it. Feldman was a child at the time as well, so I cannot place much blame on him, but Haim seemed to. Doing well, sober, working on a movie he was proud of, and filming a reality show, and then he dies of pneumonia. I am not convinced. He was 38. Haim had been in the industry for over 25 years. Of course, there were rumors of a relapse, but the official cause of death was pneumonia. Years later, Feldman named another lesser-known actor as his abuser. I believe Haim was going to name Charlie Sheen as his abuser on the set of Lucas. He had already revealed that the abuse began on the set but never said who. There is speculation it was a producer as well, possibly both. Corey Haim was in the best shape he had been in over a decade. Sober and healthy. He did not just die of pneumonia at 38. Nobody talks about him. He is rarely mentioned in conversations about teen stars. He appeared in movies with Winona Ryder, Sally Field, James Garner, Kiefer Sutherland, Jason Patric, the list goes on. Yet, you rarely see him mentioned unless it is in articles about child actors who struggled with their lives, which is unfair. He did not ruin his life. The men who abused him did. Few people read what I post about Corey Haim. Maybe a few, but I doubt even that. His death affected me more than any other celebrity, and he has been gone for over 15 years. Definitely gone too soon. He had talent and charisma and was making a comeback, until he confronted Feldman about his role in the abuse and said on the reality show that he was going to name names. Notable films include Lucas, Murphy's Romance, License to Drive, Silver Bullet, The Lost Boys, Fast Getaway, Dream a Little Dream, Blown Away, Too Many to List. Rest in peace, Corey. You are missed every single day. Story 30. Carol Landis. That Rex Harrison could let her die while he went through her address book to find her private doctor to avoid a scandal on his part upsets me. And that a second wife also overdosed on pills raises my concerns. Story 31. I understand the question but took it another way. The day the music died. Losing Prince, Tom Petty, and David Bowie almost all at once. To me, music has never been the same. Life has never been the same. We all went through so much that there was a shift we never recovered from, to be honest. Story 32. Jonathan Brandis. Michael Jackson. Gene Wilder. Richard Simmons. Paul Rubens. Steve Harwell. Whitney Houston and her daughter Bobby. Brittany Murphy. Aaliyah. Lisa Left Eye Lopez. Anton Yelchin. Tupac Shakur. The Notorious B.I.G. Story 33. I have said for years that Sean Combs killed Christopher Wallace. It is the way he was able to take control of all of Bad Boy Records. Also, his two biggest hits are probably M.O. Money M.O. Problems and Missing You, neither of which he would have if Christopher Wallace were around. Recent events only make my conviction stronger. Story 34. River Phoenix. His death always saddens and angers me. So much passion and talent taken from us way too soon and in such a preventable way. I am still angry about the situation, about him, and about the people around him. Story 35. Ivana Trump reportedly fell down some steps, which has led to conspiracy theories about her death. Why is it that we never hear anything about it? If she had been close friends with the Clintons, right-wing commentators would be discussing it extensively. Story 36. Judith Ava Barcy was so young and innocent. I hope her father faces justice for his actions. Story 37. Ivana Trump fell down the stairs just before her non-disclosure agreement with Donald Trump expired, allowing her to speak freely. Story 38. Cameron Boyce, not because it is suspicious or anything, it was just hard to believe. Even now, years later, it does not seem right. Story 39. Cliff Burton, Metallica bassist, was sleeping on the tour bus when the driver fell asleep and lost control. Cliff, still in his bunk, was thrown through the window as the bus landed on him. Story 40. Mitch Hedberg. His death made the news so close to April Fool's Day that I was convinced it was a stunt. It is hard to believe it has been 20 years now. Story 41. Brandon Lee. I have zero reaction to any celebrity death other than empathy for their family. But I was a huge Bruce Lee fan as a kid and was excited for Brandon's career. It shocked me when I heard. Story 42. Michael Jackson. After being acquitted in his 2005 trial and with the world media outraged that their hypothetical cash cow would not be imprisoned, he was never the same and became even more of a recluse than he already was. He moved around for years from the Middle East to Ireland and England, never finding a place to settle down. He made a deal to do 10 shows for a farewell tour. On the night of the announcement of This Is It in London, he was slapped and forced into the shower by the chief executive officer of Anschutz Entertainment Group, the tour promoter, because he was late for his appearance. Due to demand, the number of shows was increased to 50 without his consent. Anschutz Entertainment Group then hired an incompetent and corrupt doctor, Conrad Murray, to prescribe Michael Jackson dangerous amounts of propofol rather than help him recover and return to a healthy state. After months of grueling rehearsals and Michael Jackson appearing frail and unwell, he passed away on June 25, 2009, because Murray did not use an adequate pulse oximeter when monitoring him under sedation. Murray then waited an hour and a half after Michael Jackson stopped breathing before bringing his security guard and children into the room, at which point the security guard called emergency services. It is troubling that Murray was also making phone calls to unknown numbers after discovering Michael Jackson was not breathing, which he never disclosed to law enforcement. He also delayed significantly before attempting to save him. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.